Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Yeah. Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Broadcasting 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Brad is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. Guineith Isaacs is with us. And let me give you the telephone number. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. And I'm not going to give you the telephone listen line number because it's not working. And we're getting a lot of calls here at the farmhouse about how it keeps replaying the same broadcast over and over. And it has been for, I guess we're getting almost a month now. So if you'd like to call, well, you can't call. I can't call either. But you can send an email to support@zenoradio.com and ask them to please fix the USA Prepares telephone listen line because it's stuck. It's absolutely stuck. So that is support, SUPPORT, at Zenoradio, ZENO radio.com. Subject line, you can put USA Prepares listen line is stuck. Please repair it if you can. And they'll probably want to know that telephone listen line number, so now I'll give it to you. 605-477-3249. 605-477-3249. And why is this important? Because thousands and thousands and thousands of hours are listened to of this broadcast on telephones. Hard to believe, but it's absolutely true. People take us with them as they work, as they travel. So that's support@zenoradio.com. And thank you for doing that. Guineith Isaacs, welcome.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning?
Well, it's just a little bit after 9 a.m. this morning, and it's a little bit after 2 in the morning in Australia, right?
Yep, that's right.
Wow, you are really dedicated. Thank you so much. And what made it worse is for you is daylight savings time here in the United States, right? That did it.
Yep, that's right.
So,
and we've just begun our daylight savings here about a month ago.
Yep.
And I actually work for an American company. And I had to deal with all the schedule adjustments with my company as well.
Yep, and then so you had daylight savings time in Australia, and then we compounded that by...
Just got used to that changeover, and then the American daylight savings
I think it's time we get rid of it.
Or whatever it did.
I think it's time we get rid of this. It's a nuisance.
I think it's a stupid idea.
Yeah. One of the things that we wanted to talk about today was false flags. And, these events that happen, they get blamed on other people. Okay, false flags. And they're not new. They've been going on for a long, long time. As a matter of fact, in 1773, in Boston Harbor, Boston, Massachusetts, United States of America, not then, there was a colony back then, but some colonists disguised themselves as Mohawk Indians, and they boarded 3 ships, British ships, and they dumped chests of tea into the Boston Harbor, and that was known as the Boston Tea Party. It was a midnight raid. And so the idea was to put the blame on somebody else. So we're just getting started as colonies, and we decide that we're going to blame other people for our deeds. And that kind of thing's been going on for centuries. So we did it, and we blamed the Indians. And so who are the Indians? Those are the people who were on the land, and we decided that, you know what, this is really a nice place. It's so nice, we'd like to have some. As a matter of fact, we'd like to take it over. And then what do? We used biological warfare, and we gave the Indians some blankets to keep them warm, and they were disease-ridden, and then the Indians died. I mean, we shot them with guns from a distance. We shot them with cannons. We were just horrible. So, we kicked it off pretty early in the game with the false flag. And we're not the only ones that do that. And it's been going on for a very, very long time. As a matter of fact, I've got an article in front of us from Republic Broadcasting. And it says, presidents, prime ministers, congressmen, generals, spooks, meaning CIA types, soldiers, and police admit to false flag terror. So, and if we just go on, it says, in the following instances, officials in government which carried out the attack seriously proposed an attack admit to it, either orally, in writing, or through paragraphs or videos, or photographs or videos. So, you want to talk about that, Guineith? Some of these false flag events?
Yeah, because, of course, what happened over the weekend with this church in Texas, and 27 people basically getting murdered by a nutcase, and the predictable response of the brainless left was to A, blame the guns, and B, assert that the way to cure this sort of problem is to get rid of the guns.
Yeah. Just so the police have the guns, right? It'll be a one-way shootout.
Yes.
Yeah.
The thing is that they kind of ignore the fact that it was a ordinary civilian who happened to enjoy his trips to the rifle range and happened to have his long gun in his house, his rifle, that is, in his house, who actually saved the day, who lived opposite the church, noticed that the church was getting shot up, and went and got his gun out of his house and basically put this evil soul out of commission and gave him a quick trip down to the Universal Barbecue Center. You know what the Universal Barbecue Center is?
I guess that would be the crematorium.
It's the pit of hell.
Oh, yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah, which is where people like that really belong.
Mm-hmm. We've got Jay, truck driver Jay, who's in Florida this time. Truck driver Jay in Florida, welcome.
Good morning, Vincent. I know you just mentioned it a little bit ago, but the call-in listening line's still playing that thing from over a month ago.
Yeah, I got your message over the weekend. Mrs. Finelli told me that you had called. And so I've been giving out the Xeno Radio support email address. I've contacted them several times, and I've said, can you please fix it? And they said, if it's not fixed by, tonight at midnight, and this was, quite a while ago, that let us know. So I've let them know again. And I thought, if they received a few hundred or maybe a few thousand emails at support@xenoradio.com, maybe it might get the attention that we'd like it to have. Now, the problem is that we have supported Xeno Radio by giving out their number and telling people to listen, and people have. And I got to tell you that a lot of our class is on the other end of a phone listening, whether it be a landline or a cell phone of some kind. As a matter of fact, I think that you do the same thing, don't you?
Yes, I listen to the listen-in line, and I've been trying to listen to the show, but it starts off no matter what time of day I try to call in. It starts off right at the beginning, with bliss.com, and you got to listen to the whole program to get to where you were before.
Yeah,
and it's frustrating. You were talking about this thing in Texas that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything happens to the homosexual community, you're gayophobic. If anything happens to
you never hear the end of it. And if it had been a mosque, it just about would have been World War III.
Yeah, then you're Islamophobic if you are, if you do something against the blacks, you're against, you're blackophobic, well, how about Christian-phobic?
Christophobic.
Nobody's talking about that.
Well picked.
Nobody's talking about that.
Christophobic. Yeah.
Or godophobic, because this guy was an atheist, and nobody's talking about that.
And the we'll call them liberals were right out early in the game, letting us know that we need to have gun control. And President Trump made a comment, and it was quite apropos, and it was, and I'm paraphrasing, that we're fortunate to have someone with a gun nearby, and that's the right answer.
Yeah.
And if everybody in the church carried a handgun, it'd be pretty unlikely that that kind of event would happen. As a matter of fact, if everyone in an automobile or a truck carried a handgun, there would probably be very little road rage. It would be more like, you go first. No, go ahead. You go first. No, go ahead. You go first. Be more like that. We'll be right back. Guineith Isaacs is with us. And so in this article that we're talking about on Republic Broadcasting, it's written by Ken, K-E-N, and it says, false flag, a horrific staged event blamed on a political enemy and used as a pretext to start a war or enact draconian laws in the name of national security. Goes on to say, here's one of the false flag events. Japanese troops set off a small explosion on a train track in 1931, almost 100 years ago, and falsely blamed it on China in order to justify an invasion of Manchuria. So that's in 1931. And then another one says a major with the Nazi SS admitted at the Nuremberg trials under orders of from the chief of the Gestapo, he and some other Nazi operatives faked attacks on their own people and resources, which they blamed on the Polish, in order to justify the invasion of Poland. Another one says the minutes of a high command of the Italian government subsequently approved by Mussolini himself. There was an admission that violence on the Greek-Albanian border was carried out by Italians and falsely blamed on the Greeks, an excuse for Italy's 1940 invasion of Greece. Goes on and on, doesn't it?
Yeah, and unfortunately, if anyone breaks wind at the wrong time, it's blamed on the Jews. Mm-hmm. Internationally, that's just how it is. Mm-hmm. And, you see this, if there's any major political thing, you just wait for the Jew haters to come out and start blaming Israel or the Jews or, the Zionists for whatever the latest problem has been. Everything from 9/11 to, the latest mass shooting. Mm-hmm. And it kind of gets a bit tiresome after a while because, You know, there are other groups in the world, and every nation has its own little mafia. And, you know, it's, you know, my boys, they were saying, "Oh, Mum, what do you think this thing is of this guy?" And I said, well, it's going to be one of a few things, okay? He's either going to have, they're either going to find out that he's recently converted to Islam, or that he's an atheist, and or that he's, you know, an Antifa patsy, basically. And as it turned out, there were people that said that it was the first, but I don't know that there's any evidence for that. But as it turned out, that they were really, really quick to get rid of his Facebook page. They did not want people seeing his Facebook page. And you know why? I reckon that he probably had a lot of Antifa literature on his Facebook page, but they forgot to get rid of his other social media accounts, and people went and looked them up, and sure enough, he was somebody who believed that basically that the fascists were to blame for absolutely everything, and that you know, that if you didn't support Antifa, that you're a Nazi, yada, 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 which is basically classic false flag type psychology, and you'd be an absolute fool to actually fall for it, because obviously the world's a very complicated place, and it gets more complicated when you start to deal with politics and political groups. And all of these people who are sucked in by all this Antifa propaganda, they kind of neglect to remember that the whole Antifa movement is actually funded by George Soros, who's one of the most wicked creatures who's walking the face of the earth at this time.
But that's not his name. His name is not George Soros. That's the name he uses. It's George Schwartz. Yep. We'll be right back. I'll be right back. If you'd like to get in touch with Guineith Isaacs, you can just go to usaprepares.com, click on the Instructors tab, and you'll find a link that'll take you to her Facebook page. Guineith, we're talking about George Soros. His real name is George Schwartz. In 1936, the Soros family changed their name from Schwartz, S-C-H-W-A-R-T-Z, to Soros, S-O-R-O-S, as a way of camouflaging their, what'd you call it? Their faith.
Jewish heritage?
Jewish heritage, sure. Jewish heritage.
Oh, there's evidence for your false flag right there. All the world's problems really are caused by the Jews. Yeah, just forget the fact that, like, he actually was responsible for dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of Jewish people actually going to the gas chambers in Auschwitz. You know, just leave that little historical detail in the gutter. You know, just remember the fact that he's a Jew and he's caused all these massive problems in the world. You know, I think if you looked into it more closely, you'd probably find out that he was Ashkenazi anyway. And the Ashkenazim are not really Jews in the first place. And if anybody knew, if they were either Christian or Jewish and they knew what the Bible said, Ashkenaz was the son of Japheth, the son of Adam. He wasn't even the son of Shem, okay? For everybody out there who might not know their Bible history, they'd know about Noah's Ark and that Noah had three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, okay? And those three sons were responsible for repopulating the earth, and we can all trace our ancestry back to one of them. Japheth was the ancestor of all the Europeans and the Asians. Shem is the ancestor of the Middle Eastern peoples, and Ham is the ancestor of the Africans, okay? And by Asians, I include, many of the North American tribes in there as well. A lot of the South American tribes are actually Hamitic in their ancestry, and all the Polynesians are Hamitic, and the, Australian Aborigines are Hamitic as well. But, it's not even closely related. The Ashkenazi, and yet they call themselves Jews. They married into the Jews extensively, but they're not Jews. And, the Ashkenazis are my ancestors, but that doesn't make me a Jew. And loads of my ancestors married Ashkenazi. I know I have the stage name of Isaac. I married a man by the name of Isaac, but, he wasn't a Jew either. There's a lot of people who live in Europe who have Jewish surnames who are not actually Jews for various reasons. But the thing is, it does set the stage when one of them goes rogue, like George Soros, for the Jews to be blamed for all the world's problems and for everybody to hate the Jews. That's one example. But, of course, it does happen with other nations as well. And, like you say, the Boston Tea Party, the poor old Mohawks. You know what that was over? It was over 0.5% tax rate.
0.5% tax rate. And if you go to Springfield, Missouri this afternoon, you'll find the tax rate is 8%. And I don't get it. I just don't understand why people are putting up with this absolutely outrageous taxation that we're experiencing. And here's what I don't get. I really don't get this. For me, frugality is a way of life. I don't waste anything. But if you look at the cities with the highest tax rate, or some of the cities with the highest tax rates, you'll see these great edifices built for the city employees, the city worker bees, city government. And
the people
it just
are
seems
living
like
in poverty.
That's correct.
Yeah,
but
that's exactly what's going on here at the moment as we speak. We've got a massive streetscape rejuvenation program, and we've got about a 30 to 50% unemployment rate. Basically, if you don't make your own work around here, you don't have work.
Yeah, and it's not all unlike
unless you work for the municipal corporation. They're about the only employer and the supermarket that's left around here.
Well, in our neck of the woods, it's banks, fast food joints, and churches. Those are the organizations. Well, and medical services. Those are the service industry seems to be doing.
God help me.
Much better.
Hang on a moment.
Yeah.
Hang on a moment.
Sure. The service industry is doing much better in the United States, in the Springfield, Missouri area, than manufacturing. You don't see much in manufacturing. What am I talking about? Auto parts sales? Well, they're doing okay. Churches, mega churches. It's not just like there's one and it's an anomaly. There are a bunch of these mega churches scattered throughout Springfield, Missouri. As a matter of fact, there's a saying that there's a church on every corner in Springfield, Missouri. That's an exaggeration. But if we were to say there's a church on every third corner, that might not be an exaggeration. Yeah, I'm being serious. And so you got to wonder. People are being forced at the muzzle of a gun to pay these outrageous taxes. I'm talking about all kinds of taxes. Real estate taxes, personal property taxes, sales tax, income tax. It just goes on and on and on. And they're willing to do it. And they're willing to give up a third of their income. And they're also willing to let the government tell them about health care. Heck, health care has been going up 25% or more per year for years, ever since the dark days of the United States. I mean, the recent dark days. I'm talking about the Obama and Clinton administrations. Yeah. Hillary and Barry Soetoro. Job opportunities are gone. About 1/3 of Americans don't have jobs. Now, some people are, maybe like my mom in her 90s. She doesn't need to have a job. She's already done her work. And then there are some young people who are less than 15 years old. They don't have to have jobs either. But they could have, jobs around the neighborhood, cleaning up, raking leaves and things like that. But the statistics that I read are about 100 million of us don't have jobs. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Hello, I'm back again.
Yeah. We're talking about the number of people in America who don't have jobs, about 1/3 of us. Now, some of us are, seniors, and some of us are very young, but 1/3 of us don't have jobs.
Yeah,
and
most
you look
of
at
the people who do work for the corporation of government.
Yes.
And something,
stealing.
That's the real fascism. And you notice, that these ignorant plebeians in the, organisation called Antifa, most of them are woefully ignorant on what fascism actually is. It's the merger of state and corporate power. And don't believe me, go and type that phrase into your favorite internet search engine, and you'll come up that it's a quote from Benito Mussolini. And he ought to know. And if the people out there don't know who Benito Mussolini was, he was the fascist dictator of Italy during the period of World War II. And he was cooperating with the Nazis, fully cooperating with the Nazis. They were going to work together, and they were going to stitch Europe up, and they were going to rule Europe together. So, it sort of puts all of their political Bravo Sierra into the gutter. They don't know what they're talking about. They've got the entirely wrong people picked out for their little campaign, that they're working for somebody who was basically working hand in fist with the Nazis, who was working hand in fist with, Benito Mussolini. And he, their ignorance for anyone out there who's actually studied history is absolutely mind-boggling, But they don't know it because their university professor didn't tell them that.
Let me share a little story.
Isn't it, Vincent?
Yeah, let me share a little story with you. Kind of shows how this works. I was talking with a guy who was no longer in the state government in Missouri. And he was telling me that he found out that he no longer had a valid driver's license. And that was because he did something that frosted the governor. So he did something as a representative that got the governor mad at him. Next thing he knows, his driver's license is no longer valid. And he's subject to arrest because his driver's license is no longer valid. So, allegedly, the governor turns the police, that'd be state police, county police, local police, all the police, against this guy. So if this guy makes a turn without a signal, does something to get pulled over, next thing he knows is he's under arrest for operating a vehicle without a driver's license. All because the governor was frosted with something that he did. Now I'm going to tell you how that affected. Yes, that's why I said it. Guineith Isaacs is with us. So, years ago, we had a really big expo. And, I think about 6,000 people came. And so we were starting to get noticed as an organization that could get people to show up. Now, it's one thing to talk on the radio and mention your thoughts and comments and things that you think are true and experiences. That's one thing. That'd be maybe talk radio, as it's called. It's another thing to be involved with what we call do radio. We don't just talk about it, we do it. And for years we were able to have these expos, and we enjoyed having them, and a lot of people showed up. So that seemed to get the attention of the other team. Well, my wallet was in a bag, a small, you might call it a size of a notebook computer case, and I had my long check register in there with some credit cards and cash and, things like that in this bag. And that is what I carried with me as my mobile information center. I had everything I needed in there. And it was stolen from my truck one day. And the moment I realized it, which was right after it was stolen, I reported to the police. And I went to the Division of Motor Vehicles to get a replacement driver's license. So I went in there and I thought, well, that's going to be a nuisance, but I should do it. Next thing I know, I'm denied getting a replacement license because my driver's license was revoked. Mm-hmm. It was suspended. I was operating my vehicle with a suspended license. Why was it suspended? Because there was an unpaid fine. So I'm trying to think about...
And let me guess, you didn't even know about the fine in the first place.
How did you know? So I didn't know about the fine in the first place.
That's
so I challenged...
entrapment.
Okay, so
That's entrapment 101.
Yeah, so I'm operating this vehicle without a state government approved permit, and every single police officer can arrest me, every one of them. And I'm just going along in my merry way, totally oblivious to the fact that someone has caused this to happen. So I tracked it down, and naturally, I found out that it was an error. It was a clerical error. So this $20 fine that got my driving, we'll call them privileges, that's what they call them around here in Missouri, removed. I was driving without a state approved permit at the time because some person either incorrectly entered this $20 fine that had nothing to do with me, or it was intentionally entered in order to cause me to possibly be arrested, because whoever would be stopping me would believe that this information is true. And it wasn't. It wasn't true. So I had to get that resolved. Then I could get my permit restored, my driver's permit or license restored, which is what I did. And then in the mail, maybe a week later, 2 weeks later, I got a box, and it had everything in there except the money and the 1 ounce gold coin. So about at the time, and I was going to buy some farm equipment, so about $3,000 was stolen. And the police, the sheriff's office, no help whatsoever. Worthless. No. Absolutely worthless. But what I'm saying is, someone, I believe, entered that information to get me on the, revoked driver's license list, so I would be arrested. That's fascism.
I fully believe that.
We'll be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. Guineith, I just heard on the news just now, just before the intro to this hour number 2 of USA Prepares, about this new camera that has facial recognition built in. And I'm thinking about this, like, how good is this? Well, what comes to mind is, since Google is involved, those images that get tagged with who people are, I'm sure it gets uploaded to the cloud for safe storage. Mm-hmm. And now Google has even more images of us. Okay? That's one thing. Now I was thinking about another thing. I want to politely tell people who come to our house, you know what? Leave your phones in the car. That would be a good thing. Because I want to say it politely. And then, I've had a sign on the door that says no cell phones. But I think maybe for the Christmas, Thanksgiving holidays here in the United States, we maybe we'll have a little softer message, but still firm. So I think the way I'm going to do this is to say, I'm so glad you'll be visiting us in the next couple of months. And to make it convenient for you, here's our phone number. Here's our landline phone number so that you can make sure that anyone that needs to contact you while you're at our home at the farm here will have our number so they'll be able to contact you since your phone will be in your car. I think that's how I'm going to do it.
If you look at how these corporations do this sort of thing, you'll find that's generally how they do it. And it is really sad. People have to really stop and think before they introduce this sort of technology to their homes. Okay, because it's a thing of you have to be aware that these cameras, many of them actually have infrared capability. That means they can see in the dark. Are you really sure that you want, let's say, for instance, images of you getting in and out of the shower to be uploaded to the cloud?
That's a really good point.
If you're in your house and you think, oh shoot, I've left the towel on the bed, and you're the only one home, you duck out of the shower, you go to your bedroom, you get the towel off the bed, and then you go back into the bathroom, And meanwhile, the security camera is in the living room, and it's just seen a picture of you running nude through your living room, and that's even in broad daylight. Are you sure you want that to be uploaded to the cloud?
Well, how about
really mild?
How about taking that the next step, where and this has happened. This has happened where the young daughter is doing
that's right, the M&Ms.
cartwheels.
And she was there was a little girl, and when you're little kids, sometimes you do silly things. She was eating M&Ms in the nude in her own bedroom on the floor, and she was doing a drawing or something, And when you're a little kid, sometimes, you do that. And
well, how about this father who was taking film photographs of his children, maybe something like Christmas, and the children are downstairs in the living room, for example, and she's doing cartwheels, and she's got her bathrobe on, and she does a cartwheel in the bathrobe, or let's say it's one of those long sleep shirts, that I don't know what they're called,
and
but come down to your and it gravity pulls it so you can see her underwear, and Dad snaps a picture at just that time and doesn't think anything of it. Sends these Christmas photographs off to be developed. And the guy developing them and printing them sees this particular photograph that even the dad didn't know snapped at that exact second. And Dad gets arrested for child pornography. And it's just a family photo that he took innocently. Yeah. Now, obviously, if Dad knew about it, he wouldn't have had it developed because he wouldn't want whoever's developing these pictures to see that. Not that it was anything wrong. It's just he doesn't want or wouldn't want, some stranger seeing a picture of his young daughter in her underwear.
Yeah.
So these things can happen.
But you got to think, what sort of a pervert is out there on the Google staff monitoring this home security footage? And you have to take account that probably about 90% of the Google staff have left-wing politics. that's been absolutely verified beyond a shadow of a doubt. And, they would call themselves liberals, or maybe some other phrase, but some sort of left-wing politics. And there's been surveys that have come out over and over and over and over again which say that people with liberal politics are just way more likely to lie, to steal, to take advantage of you, to, be involved in all sorts of nefarious stuff and not think anything of it, and you ultimately find that most people who are pedophiles actually have left-wing politics. Is anybody surprised there? If you're going to lie to someone, if you're going to steal from someone, if you're going to cheat someone, if you're going to take stuff that belongs to somebody else, well, of course you're going to take advantage of people who don't know any better.
It's interesting you say this. I was thinking, as you're saying, I was thinking about people's attitudes. There was a sheriff. He's no longer a sheriff in this area, in the Springfield, Missouri area. I know this guy. And he was arrested. He was arrested for a financial scheme that bilked people out of millions of dollars. Okay? He was arrested and he was sent to prison for 1 year and 1 day. And people would say, yeah, it's really bad. It's sad because, his wife had a really serious disease and he had all these medical bills. And that's why he did it. So, maybe it's not so bad. Really? This is a guy who was elected by the people, allegedly, to protect and serve them. And yet he's running a fraud, a financial scheme, and then the people whom he was supposed to be protecting and serving say, well, it's probably, you got to give him some slack because, his wife was really sick and he had these enormous medical bills. And I submit to everyone, that's no excuse. Absolutely no excuse. If you can't pay your medical bills, you are not going to be put in debtor's prison. That's not going to happen. What you do is you go to the hospital and say, I'd love to pay these bills, except I can't. I don't have any money right now. Or I can pay X amount of dollars per week. And they'll put you on a payment plan. But you're not going to go to prison because you can't pay your hospital bill. So exactly why did he do this? He could have worked it out with the hospital, the doctor's offices, the clinics. They'd all work it out. Or they'd trash his, worst case, they trash his financial score, his credit rating, and he goes bankrupt. And he starts over. That's the worst case. But no, he decides he's going to rip people off, and he does, and he ultimately gets caught, and he loses his position as a sheriff, and he loses a lot of respect. Some people, I think it's okay. I don't get it. I really don't. People are nuts. It's not proper. It's not nice. It's not correct. It's not above board to steal from friends and family, and that's what this guy did as a sheriff. So how can you trust a sheriff who does that? How can you do that? You can't. The thing is that sort of you try finding a supposed law enforcement officer who you could really trust around here. You can't do it. They're like unicorns. They don't exist. Well, and I've actually had people try and defend them. And then I've explained to them, as I've said many times on the air, of what they're actually doing around here, of issuing women, especially single mothers, especially poor women, with enormous fines. And then, harassing them if they won't pay them and, saying, well, we'll let the fine off if you provide some of the officers with an evening's entertainment, and then the word is on the street that they're not gentle with their entertainment, the woman ends up getting sexually assaulted, and so on and so forth, and she's got no recourse. Now, you've mentioned this. You've mentioned this in the past.
That's definitely not okay behaviour. You know,
right.
What gives them the right? This is the real fascism that is out there because they work for a private corporation called Serco, and they're posing as a government. And Serco is one of the largest what do they call it? Military contractors. You go on the internet, you type in SERCO, Serco, and you'll find that they're one of the largest black ops and paramilitary contractors on the earth. And they're running our police in the state of Victoria.
Class Guineith Isaacs is with us. And she's live in Australia. And for months and months and months, Guineith has been telling us that the police in Australia, at least in her neck of the woods, have a reputation of giving tickets to people who are women who are operating vehicles, and then letting those women know that, they can have those tickets dispensed with for providing some services to the male officers in blue. And some of us may not believe that that's true. Well, let me tell you a story. This is on the dailymail.co.uk. And it says, the article says, pictured 2 New York Police Department narcotics detectives are indicted for raping an 18-year-old woman in the back of a police van while she was in handcuffs. Let me say that a different way. 2 New York Police Department narcotics detectives are indicted for raping an 18-year-old woman in the back of a police van while she was in handcuffs. Goes on to say, Detectives Eddie Martins, 37, and Richard Hall, 32, were arraigned on Monday on 50-count indictment charging them with rape, criminal sexual act, kidnapping.
Kidnapping.
Martins and Hall. Yeah. Martin and Halls are accused of forcing a handcuffed 18-year-old girl to perform sex acts on them, while in the back of a police minivan last month. District Attorney's Office says Martins raped the teenager while Hall watched. Hall and Martins, from the New York Police Department's Brooklyn South Narcotics, did not deny the sexual acts, but claimed they were consensual. Now,
yeah, that's what they would do around here too, because I'll tell you how they would do that. Okay? They would say, "Oh, but the woman agreed to it." Because you were operating extortionately towards her, and she believed that she had no choice. That's how that would go. That's their definition of consent. Okay, carry on.
And it also might be that they've got the muzzle of a gun in her ear.
Yeah. Or
saying
threats of drug charges from goods that have been planted on her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe.
So what we're talking about, class, is there are people who are in uniform who have taken an oath to protect and serve, which are not protecting, not serving, who are fleecing us, who are raping us, and who are committing all kinds of crimes against us. And I remember talking to a young person, our son, and I said to him, I think when this all falls apart, the police are going to go home. They're not going to protect and serve anybody. He said, "No, Dad, no, you got it all wrong. No, the police are going to be in business for themselves. The police are going to be in business for themselves." Already. Yeah. And what he meant was, can start with highway robbery.
Yeah, I was going to say that. That's the start of it.
Yeah.
And then you've got helping the child kidnapping ring, and then you've got extortion, which is planting evidence and making evidence disappear on command. And they're real magicians, they are, they can make things appear and disappear at will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there we go. Yep.
And then you hear a story about judges. I don't think that we have a criminal justice system. We don't have a
justice system here.
And I don't think we have one here either.
It's all a racket. It's all stitched up from start to finish, and the only way out of it is to not consent to any of it. Mm-hmm. That's the only way that this problem will ever be peacefully fixed, is if enough of us peacefully refuse to consent to contract with them.
We'll be right back. That's just a short update. On Thursday at 4 p.m. Central Time, right here on this network, I will be Dr. Bill Deagle's guest. We'll be talking about survival and preparedness. On Friday, right here on this network, at 10 a.m., Dr. Bill Deagle will be our instructor, talking about the coming plague. I asked him if he could tell us what it is and what we need to do to protect ourselves from it, the plague just off the coast of Africa. That's on Friday. Getting back to the story that Guineith and I are talking about, this is continuing from the dailymail.co.uk. According to a press release from the District Attorney's Office on September 15th, at around 7:30 p.m., the two detectives, Martins and Hall, were on duty, riding in a Dodge Caravan as part of a team of plainclothes detectives conducting a buy and bust operation in the 60th Precinct. They left their post without authorization and drove to a section of Brooklyn. Just after 8 p.m., the officers pulled over an Infiniti coupe driven by the 18-year-old, this is the woman we're talking about, with two male passengers. After observing some marijuana in a cup holder, Hall and Martins ordered the two men and women to get out of the car and asked if they had any drugs on them, according to the investigation. The 18-year-old woman admitted to be in possession of marijuana and two pills, after which the detective put her in handcuffs and told her she was under arrest and would be getting a desk appearance ticket. They let her male companions go and instructed them to pick up their friend from the precinct in 3 hours' time. A short time later, the detectives told the teenager to call her friends and tell them not to follow the police minivan. Let me say that again. A short time later, the detectives told the teenager...
Alarm bells right there.
Right.
It should have been alarm bells. Mm-hmm. Those friends should have said, no, we'll follow the van. We're going to look after our friend.
Yeah. So, to repeat...
They should not have left her to their devices.
Right. To repeat, a short time later, the detectives, and these guys are on duty, told the teenager to call her friends and tell them not to follow the police minivan. Detective Martin allegedly told the young woman that he and his partner are freaks and asked her what she wanted to do to get out of the arrest. It's alleged that Martins then forced the handcuffed girl to perform sex on them while seated in the back of the van as his partner Hall drove and watched through the rearview mirror. Martins then allegedly raped the victim. When the cops reached Bay Bridge, about 4 miles from the site of the traffic stop, Martins and Hall, these are the officers, allegedly swapped places, with the former getting behind the wheel and the latter getting in the back seat, where he allegedly forced the 18-year-old to perform a sex act on him as well. Martins and Hall then drove back to the vicinity of the 60th Precinct and had the victim call her friends again to tell them she was being let go. They allegedly gave her back her pills and told her to keep her mouth shut and released her. The 18-year-old, this is the woman, the girl, the 18-year-old told her friends what happened, and later that evening she was taken to the hospital where a rape kit was prepared, DNA was recovered from the victim, and it was a match to Martins and Hall, the detectives. After the allegations broke, they and their supervisor were placed on modified duty and stripped of their badge and guns. 2 officers have since been suspended without pay. Now, here's my comment. That's not sufficient. They should be
No, they get a paid holiday.
Jail. They should, yes.
Yeah, they get a paid holiday.
Yeah, they should be in jail awaiting trial.
And by the way, this is just a comment, okay? That's exactly the same modus operandi that they use around here, okay? They never, directly ask the woman, they leave it for the woman to figure out for herself, okay? So here they pull the woman over, they give her a $758 fine or whatever in one hit. That's generally about the figure. And then they leave her to think about it for a moment. And they go to their car, they sit there in their car, they pretend to do some paperwork for about, 15 minutes or whatever. And then they come back and then they say, here's your ticket, your license, you can go now or whatever. And then, it's very, very foolish to actually drive off before the cop because the cop can, so he'll sit behind you for about 5 or 10 minutes pretending to do paperwork, and then he'll drive off. You know what I mean? So he never directly says it. But in my case, Brad Hyatt, who at that time was, high up in the ranks at the Wedderburn police station, he actually said, I'm coming around to your house later, and that's a direct quote, okay? And, you can fill in the blanks what for. And he said that he, at that time, I've got concerns for the welfare of your children, which is basically a threat to get the child protection involved. And we'd been working hard all day building fences and carting fencing materials, all right? And so my children and I were hot, sweaty, tired, and basically really grotty, as you would be after a hard day carting fencing materials and doing farm work and all that sort of stuff. But that's basically, that's how they operate. They say, I'm
let me ask you this.
To your house later. Or they issue you with the ticket and then they go back to their police car and just sit there for 10 minutes. You know what I mean? Until they figure out that...
But Georgia, New Hampshire... Georgia, New Hampshire is joining us. George, before we go on to your thoughts, Guineith, what would happen if your husband, Archie, were alive at that time when the police said they were going to come around to your house?
I don't think I'd like to say it on air, but it wouldn't be very good for that police officer.
That's kind of what I was thinking. If he was still alive, let's just say he had lots and lots of friends, okay? And his friends tend to have criminal records anyway. He was never arrested, never in his life. But he had lots of friends who were criminals anyway and didn't really care if they got arrested and got put inside for a little while. Yeah. Georgia, New Hampshire, welcome.
Hi, Vincent. Hello, Guineith. I was in law enforcement for a time, and I'll tell you, the saying was, if a man lasted more than 5 years on the job, now I'm not going to say this for everyone with that brush, but too many times I'd say it fit. It was a combination. I'm going to be a little crude here. It was considered booze, broads, and bribes. And there were a lot of any one of those available to someone who decided to dip into that particular slush fund. Now, I'll say this. When you expect an individual to go down a dark alley and they have to go after somebody who may or may not have a gun, or go into a bank where somebody's holding up or holding hostages, I'm just saying, it takes a special kind of an individual to be able to do that at a moment's notice. Now, a lot of them find that they were attracted to the job not because of necessarily a deep calling, although I would say many of them do when they join. And then they realize what they're up against, and they realize what's expected of them, and they realize that they have to see more, as I told you once before, a long time ago, Vincent, that they see more in 2 weeks than the average person may see in a lifetime. And I've seen too many of them go off the deep end, commit suicide, basically have nervous breakdowns and have to be retired from the force. And then you have a certain element of the other ones who basically they tough it out. The marriages go south. And all I'll say is just that it reaches a point where then you have another kind who they're going to use it to their own advantage, and they're corrupt. And maybe they wanted the job to get into that position and to have that kind of authority and have the badge as a shield to prevent them from being prosecuted for their own malicious and evil actions.
George, it's difficult for me to envision you being a law enforcement person, but I can envision you being a police officer.
I appreciate that compliment and that distinction. But I will say
I really mean that.
Vincent and Guineith, you know and I know there are predators. And predators come in all shapes and sizes. They might wear a suit. They might wear a dress. And when you see what human nature, so-called human, in human nature is capable of, and when you walk in on a scene and you see things that haunt you and that you can't get out of your mind, and you just get enough of it, you reach a point where a lot of times it's very hard to come to grips with it. And I remember when I came home at the end of the day, I'd not only be exhausted, I didn't want to go out, I didn't want to go anywhere, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't do drugs, but if I was of that persuasion or I had a tendency towards that, let's just say there would have been ample opportunity for it. But again, like you say, honesty and integrity. It's the way you walk inside of yourself, and before God, you say to yourself, you can look in the mirror in the morning.
That's one of the ways that we teach here at USA Preparedness is by telling stories. And when I say stories, I don't mean fabrications. I mean true events, just recounting true events and teaching by sharing those true events. So I was at the house of a former law enforcement officer, and I say that very carefully. I don't mean police officer, I mean law enforcement officer. Mrs. Finelli was with me, and so the wife of this law enforcement officer was there. The law enforcement officer was in another part of their house, and we're having lunch there. And I asked her about how this thing works and how many of the police, law enforcement, are on the take. And she said, well, it kind of starts out like this. So 2 law enforcement officers will go into a convenience store to get a cup of coffee, and the person behind the counter will say, listen, that we appreciate you guys being here. That's free. No charge. And then it's coffee and donuts. So on the shift, the law enforcement officers will show up at that convenience store, same time, in a couple of days, and they'll get their free coffee and the free donuts. And then they'll go to a restaurant and in uniform, and the owner of the restaurant will come over and say, listen, lunch is free. And then pretty soon it's lunch and dinner's free. And then it's dinner with the family on Friday night, with the children and the law enforcement officer's wife. And there's this perception that, if you feed the law enforcement officers, you give them free stuff, free food, free coffee, free donuts, free lunch, and free dinner. If you need their help, they'll probably show up. And if you don't, they might not show up.
They probably won't. That's about the sum of it. What you were saying before about, traumatization. It's something quite interesting. As a part of the work that I do because I work as a professional psychic. A part of my work that I don't take payment for, and I only have to do it from time to time, but I know how to do it, is exorcisms on houses. Okay, I refuse to take payment for that work, but you would not believe how many houses that I have been to in the course of my life where satanic ritual abuse has gone on. And as a psychic, I can see what happened in that house, and every time I see it, it never fails to astound me, and I just go, oh my God. And, one house in particular, it was actually an apartment at the time when the abuse was happening, and then, a corporation bought the building and turned it into a hotel. And there was actually quite a famous incident that occurred in that building. Somebody got kidnapped and was being held hostage in this apartment building, and basically went completely bananas and smashed the place up. And, that actually made it into the scene of a horror movie, but that actually really happened, and I, at one stage, actually did an exorcism on that apartment. And do you know something? The people who were renting that apartment at the time were actually full-on being protected by the local law enforcement. And the local law enforcement knew what they were doing and did nothing. And
Guineith, let me ask
that's
George.
Absolutely typical.
George, what I said about the donuts, the coffee, and so forth. George, does that ring?
I was told when I took the job from an older police officer that they own you for a sandwich.
There you go.
But also, that man who was law enforcement, who stole when he was with you, and you just looked at him a certain way, that didn't show any respect for himself or for you. So,
yeah, you're right.